Hi everyone, welcome back. So in this video, we will discuss about interrupts and interrupt handlers in the Linux. So let's get started. So this is the content that I will be discussing in this video. At the end, we will write and implement an interrupt handler and we will see how does it work. So uh, all the peripheral devices inside a computer or system want to communicate to do some task with the processor. So there are two mechanisms. So like CPU can continuously check if there is some request from the hardware devices. That process is called as polling. So in this process, the CPU is continuously busy and it can't do other works. So there is another efficient method that is called interrupts. So all the peripheral or hardware devices can interrupt the processor with the help of an interrupt. Interrupt is a signal. So whenever hardware want to do some task, then it can interrupt the processor with the help of a signal. And each device in the system is associated with a particular interrupt line, or you can say a unique interrupter number. So this is the typical view. So here you can see these are the devices and these are mapped to a unique interrupt line. And this is the programmable interrupt controller that controls the routing of these interrupts to the CPU. So it routes these interrupts to the CPU with the help of these two pins, NMI and INT-R. So NMI pin is used when we want to generate some non-maskable interrupts such as non-recoverable hardware errors. So in that case, it can't wait and it has to process that interrupt immediately. So this is a complex structure in modern computers because we have multi-core systems. So here, this IO APIC is advanced programmable interrupt controller. So it controls all the external interrupts from external devices in the system, and these local APICs controls the interrupt from the local devices directly connected to the each CPU. So in IO APIC, it contains a routing table. So depending on the interrupt number from the external interrupts, it can route that interrupt to a specific local APICs, and then accordingly it can handle the interrupt. So these local APICs maps these interrupts to the CPU, or they can also generate interrupts to communicate with other APICs. So let's discuss what is the difference between exception and interrupts. So exceptions are called as software interrupts, and they are synchronous to the processor timer. And so when some you may have seen some errors like divide by zero error. So this is an exception, and this is also handled as an interrupt by the processor. So exceptions are further divided into three parts: traps, fault, abort, and these are the examples of each of them. So we can say that interrupts are particularly reserved term for hardware interrupts. So here is a nesting part in Linux. So if an exception is running, then it can be preempted with the help of an interrupt. But when interrupt is running in the processor, then an exception can't preempt it. And an interrupt can't preempt the other running interrupt in the processor. So when we receive interrupt, processor saves the currently running process state into the stack, and that stack is specific for interrupt. So that is called as interrupt stack. So it stores these all E flags, CS, EIP, or some error, then error code, and then it loads the interrupt handler to process the raised interrupt from a device. So there are privilege level in the segment, code segment. So if it needs to access some segment that need privilege level higher, then it can raise its privilege. Uh, so kernel code runs in the privilege of 0 and user process runs in the privilege level of 3. So privilege level varies between 0 and 3. So CPU knows about the interrupt handler with the help of this interrupt descriptor table. It is an 256 into 8 byte entry vector, and it stores all the handlers for specific devices according to the interrupt lines or interrupt numbers. So CPU knows about this interrupt descriptor table with the help of this IDTR register. So this is the view of IDTR table. So here these are the interrupt lines 0 and 255. So in x86 we can have up to 256 interrupt numbers. So 0 to 31 interrupt lines are reserved for traps and exceptions, and 32 to 127 are for external devices into the system. And here you can see that interrupt line number 128 is specifically reserved for system calls. So we can say that system calls are handled by the processor with the help of an interrupt system. So this is the view of an entry of a IDT table. So here it contains 32-bit offset and address of segment selector. So with the help of segment selector, it looks into the global descriptor table and finds the segment descriptor. Segment descriptors contains base address of the interrupt handler, and this offset tells inside the segment where our interrupt handler is actually located. So from that it can access that ISR address. ISR is stands for interrupt service routine or interrupt handler. So let's discuss what is this interrupt handlers. So interrupt handlers are the code that we write for every device in the device driver. So when an device raise an interrupt, then this interrupt handler is run by the processor in order to service that interrupt from that particular device. So these interrupt handlers run in the interrupt or atomic context. So in this interrupt context, other interrupts are not allowed to interrupt a running interrupt from a device. So as they are not allowing other devices to communicate because other device is already running its interrupt. So that's why we try to make the interrupt handlers run as small time as small in the processor, and it has to do the time critical task only, like acknowledging the receive of a interrupt and resetting the hardware. So we can take the example of network card. So network continuously delivers the packet to the system. So if current processor try to process the whole network packet, then it will take a lot of time. So it will just get the packet from the network card, and it will handle to the kernel, and it will directly say to the device that I have serviced your interrupt. So in this way interrupt handlers run. So this is the syntax to register an interrupt for a specific device in the device driver. So it takes first parameter is the interrupt line, on which interrupt line we want to register our interrupt, and this is the interrupt handler function that will run by the processor on receiving of the interrupt, and these are the flags. So these flags defines the behavior of the interrupt. And this is the name of our device, and this is the pointer to the structure for particular device. So let's discuss the flags. So when this IRQF underscore disabled is specified in the flag field, then all the interrupts will be disabled when this interrupt will be running in the processor. Similarly, when we will specify this flag, then it will say that this interrupt is registered for processing the system timer interrupts. And when we will specify IRQF underscore shared, that means that interrupt line is shared by multiple devices, and multiple devices will give interrupt on this interrupt line. So we have to service all the interrupt request from all the registered devices. And this function is run from, this function can sleep, so we have we should take care that we should not run this function from the interrupt context. So if we want to free our registered interrupt, then we can implement this function, and it takes the IRQ number on which we have registered our interrupt and the device for which that interrupt was registered. So this device variable is important because it helps the kernel to remove the that required interrupt from the particular line. So if a line is shared by multiple devices, in that case this device pointer helps to correctly remove interrupt from a particular device. So the interrupt handler is implemented with the help of this function. So it returns a specific IRQ return underscore T type value, and here also we specify the pointer device pointer. So if it detects that the interrupt is raised by a registered device, then it returns IRQ handled. When it detects that the interrupt is raised on that line, but that interrupt is not raised by a registered device, then it returns IRQ none. So when a line is shared by multiple devices and all the handlers on that particular line returns IRQ none, in that case kernel can know that something wrong is happening, and wrongly the interrupts are generated on the particular line. So according to that it can reset. Let's discuss the shared handlers. So as we have discussed that interrupt line can be shared by multiple devices. So for that purpose, every device will register its handler. So when we register a new handler for a particular implemented line, then in that case, we have to specify IRQF shared flag as we have already discussed. So when processor receives the interrupt, then it goes with every handler registered on that line. So there is a status register inside a device. So kernel can quickly check if this interrupt is raised by this device on that line. So it can process that interrupt very quickly. So let's discuss what is this interrupt context. So in the interrupt context, no other interrupt can run or other code can run, and it is not associated with a process. And in interrupt context is very time critical because other handlers or interrupt can't run when interrupt is running in the interrupt context. So the code for interrupt handler should be quick and simple. And generally the interrupt in interrupt context, all the things are handled in the interrupts stack, and this stack is very small in size. So let's discuss the sequence when a interrupt handler run. So interrupt handling code is architecture dependent. It depends on the processor and it depends on the type of the interrupt controller and the architecture of the machine. So when we run interrupt handler, then it run a function do IRQ, and further it will run mask and ec function. So in this way, it will mask other interrupts to occur, and it will acknowledge that I have received the interrupt, and then it will accordingly handle the interrupt. When this interrupt handling is complete, it will run this function return from interrupt function, and it will return to the user to the kernel code where it was interrupted when it got the interrupt. So here in this function, it checks if other interrupts are pending on the processor, then it will run those interrupts. Otherwise, it will go to the previous code, or it can go to the other process if there is a need to reschedule the other process. So this is the overall view, all the things we have discussed till now. So here you can see a device raise an interrupt. It goes to the interrupt controller, then it interrupts the processor. Processor, with the help of IDTR, it goes to the kernel to handle the interrupt handler, and then it runs do IRQ to do the accordingly work for the interrupt. And if it is not the interrupt, then it will directly go to the return from the interrupt. And in this way, the whole process of interrupt handling will complete. So if we want to see what are all the interrupts registered for every devices in our system, then we can run this command. So at the end, we will run this command when we will see the interrupt handler code. So we have to control the interrupt because we want to synchronize, because there are multiple CPUs in modern computers. So other CPU can interfere when other CPU is running a interrupt. So log provides the inter-processor protection of code that can be accessed concurrently, and disabling interrupt helps to not run any interrupt on the current processor when it is processing a given interrupt. So these are the different mechanisms, like CLI and STI are atomic instructions, and they stands for clear interrupt, and STI is set interrupt. So there is a flag for each processor allow interrupts. So when we run these instructions, then it sets those flags. So accordingly, the interrupts can be enabled or disabled. And these functions, local IRQ enabled and local IRQ disabled, are internally implementing these CLI and STI instructions. So these are just enabling and disabling the local interrupts on a particular processor. Local underscore IRQ underscore saved function saves the current state of the processor and disables the interrupts. So this does the both work in a simple single function. And to restore the work done by this function, we can run local IRQ, local underscore IRQ underscore store. And these all functions can be run from the interrupt context and or process context. So if we want to control a specific interrupt line, then we can run this disable IRQ, and it takes IRQ number that we want to disable. Similarly, there is a function disable IRQ no sync. So the difference between this, and this is that in no sync, it will not wait for another. If another handler is running on that interrupt line, then it will not wait for that handler to finish to disable that interrupt line. But in this function, it will wait that handler to complete first. After that, it will disable that interrupt line. And this is the function to enable the disabled interrupt line. So if we want to know if our kernel is in the interrupt context or in the process context, then we can run this function. So if it returns the non-zero value, that means it is in the interrupt context. And similarly, if we want to know which interrupt it is running, then we can run this function and it will return the interrupt number, which interrupt it is running currently. So let's discuss what is top half and bottom half. So as we have discussed that interrupt handlers are very critical and they just have to do the minimal task like acknowledging the receive of an interrupt, and the other things has to be done by kernel in later time. So for that purpose, we call the interrupt handlers as the top half, because we are doing half part of the interrupt handling in the interrupt handlers. So the whatever work is pending that is not done by the interrupt handler, it is done in the bottom half, and bottom half run in the later time when kernel is having appropriate time to run it. That's why we call it as the bottom half. And these bottom halves run with all the interrupts enabled, and it can run in the process context as well. So let's see the code of implementation of interrupt handlers. So let's see the implementation of interrupt handler for keyboard. So here you can see that I have defined this interrupt number 1, and this is interrupt number 4 keyboard. And this is the implementation of interrupt handler. So as we have discussed that it returns that IRQ return underscore T type. So here we are just passing the number interrupt number, and this is the pointer to the device for which we are registering this device driver. So here we are just incrementing this variable. So for incrementing this variable, we are taking lock so that other processor can't modify this value while we are incrementing this value. And then we are printing that the interrupt has occurred and we are handling the interrupt handler. And then here, when interrupt handler tries to finish, before that it runs the bottom half. So we will discuss in future videos how it runs the bottom half. And here you can see it returns IRQ handled, as we have discussed when it handled the IRQ handler. So this is the code for device driver for keyboard. We have written a separate driver. There is already a default driver for every system, but we have written a separate device driver. So here you can see this is the way we register an interrupt. So we have to write request IRQ function. So this is the interrupt line number that we have to specify, and this is the interrupt handler function that will run when it will get an interrupt. And here you can see I am specifying IRQF underscore shared because one interrupt handler is by default registered for the keyboard, but we are registering a separate interrupt handler for our task, for our demonstration. And this is the pointer to the interrupt handler device. And if we are not able to request this interrupt, then we go here in the IRQ code and we try to free that interrupt. And this is the other mod and device driver related code. So I am not going deep into it. So let's see how this interrupt handler works. So we have to first make so we have made our modules, and now as we if you don't know, then I have to tell that the device driver code, we are generating the modules. So to that to run that module in our kernel, we have to insert it into the kernel. So there is a command ins mode and the name of the module. So module is this. So it is now registered. So now on, whatever key press I will do, it will get an interrupt and it will run that interrupt handler as we have seen. So let me type something, d message. So d message prints kernel logs. So here you can see that, so for each key press it is running that interrupt occurred and executing ISR. Okay, so I forgot how to see all the interrupt registered in the system. So let's run that command that we have discussed, cat proc interrupts. So here you can see that, so this is the interrupt number and this is the number of times it has occurred on CPU 0, and this is the number of times it has occurred on CPU 1. And here is the uh, interrupt controller name, and this interrupt is for timer, and this first interrupt is for keyboard. And I have removed our interrupt handler, otherwise we can see that our device was also device driver code was also registered for this uh, interrupt line number 1. That's why we were able to raise the interrupt. So in conclusion, we can say that we have discussed about the interrupts and the interrupt handlers, and we have also seen the implementation of an interrupt handler for keyboard and how it receives the interrupt from keyboard and it runs the interrupt handler. So this is all for this video, and these are the references for this video. So bye for now. I will see you in the next video.